After I paid off my husband's debt, his mother told me, "Don't think money makes you important. You're still beneath us." That night, I found a receipt for a gift he bought his ex. "She deserves better," he mumbled. I didn't cry. I just watched. But 10 days later, the message I sent to his boss. I live in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm 43. I've worked as a nurse at the same hospital for 15 years. I've always been the one people depend on. At work, in my family, in every relationship I've had. And when I met Daniel, I thought maybe this time someone would take care of me for once. Daniel was 36, newly divorced, and finding himself, as he put it. He was funny, confident, and always had something to say. At first, it felt like I'd met someone real. He made me feel special, like I was finally being seen. He had no job when we met. Said he was burned out from corporate life and just needed a little time to reset. I was making enough to get by, so I offered to help. I didn't expect that little time to stretch into 18 months. I covered everything. Rent, utilities, groceries, car repairs. He was always promising the next job was around the corner. My friends told me to cut it off, but I didn't want to believe he was using me. I kept thinking, this is what people do when they love someone. 2 years into our marriage, I found out he was drowning in debt. Over $38,000 in credit card balances. A lot of it was stupid stuff: gambling, electronics, a drone he used twice, online shopping. I should have run. But instead, I paid it off. I cleaned up the mess because I thought we were building a life together. His family never liked me. His mom, Jeanette, always made me feel small. She acts like her family's royalty, even though they're just barely upper middle class. The way she talked to me, you'd think I was some charity case he picked up. She'd say things like, "Daniel needs someone who matches his energy, or at least you're dependable." But I swallowed it. For years, I thought being kind would eventually earn me a place in their world. Then came his cousin's birthday dinner. Jeanette had too much wine. I went into the kitchen to help clean up, and she turned to me and said, dead serious, "Don't think money makes you important. You're still beneath us." I stood there holding a tray of empty wine glasses. I didn't say a word. Just nodded and kept washing. When we got home, I didn't bring it up. I was too tired, too used to swallowing things. I lay in bed next to Daniel, staring at the ceiling. I remember thinking, how did I get here? When did I stop being respected? The next evening, I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in his jeans. It was for a $1,200 diamond necklace, bought from a boutique in Dallas. I froze. I hadn't gotten a necklace. So I walked into the living room, receipt in hand, and asked him quietly, "Who's this for?"
He didn't even look at me.
Just kept watching TV and said, "It's for Rachel. She deserves better." Rachel,
His ex.
the one he swore he hadn't spoken to in years. My hands were shaking, but I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just stood there, like something inside me had finally gone numb. That night, I slept on the couch. But it wasn't because I was hurt. It was because I finally saw him clearly. Over the next 10 days, I went into survival mode. I smiled. I made breakfast. I kissed him goodbye like nothing had changed. But every night, I stayed up late, gathering what I needed. I pulled up our joint accounts, downloaded every credit card statement, and found dozens of little gifts, flowers, Uber rides, hotel rooms, all leading back to her. I checked our iPad, which synced to his messages. That's how I found the thread between him and Rachel. It wasn't just a fling. He'd been talking to her for months, telling her I was a burden, that he was trapped. The worst part? He used the words I once said to him, word for word. I had told him once, "I know you're capable of more. You just need support." He had sent her that exact same line, except he replaced you with I. I also found a message he'd sent to a friend, mocking me. Called me a dumb nurse with savior syndrome. Said he was milking the clock until he could upgrade again. But the real fuel came when I remembered how he got his job. Daniel works at a logistics company now. Makes decent money. That job came from me. One of my patients had a brother in HR there. I begged him to give Daniel a chance. He was hired, and now he walks around like he earned everything on his own. One message I found changed everything. He'd texted a coworker about his supervisor, called him a clueless white boy who only got promoted because of skin color. There were more messages, full of disrespect toward his job and the people around him. 10 days after I found that receipt, I sent an anonymous message to his boss. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I was done pretending. After I sent the anonymous message to Daniel's boss, I waited. I didn't know exactly what would happen, but I knew enough about that company to know they didn't tolerate what he'd written. 3 days later, he came home quiet. He dropped his bag by the door, walked to the fridge, and stood there for a long time. Then he turned to me and said, "Someone's trying to ruin me." I didn't answer. He started pacing. They said someone sent in screenshots, personal messages, to HR, about what I said to Marcus. Marcus was his boss, the clueless white boy. I asked, calm as anything, "Did you say those things?" He looked at me like he finally saw me standing there. That's not the point. I didn't flinch. It kind of is. That night, he barely slept. He kept checking his phone, calling people, texting someone named D over and over. I watched from the hallway. He was unraveling. He didn't know that wasn't the only move I'd made. I had also met with a lawyer. Quietly. I wanted to know my options. I had proof of financial abuse, how he used my accounts, how I'd paid off his debt while he spent money on another woman. The lawyer said Texas courts don't always care about infidelity and divorce, but money? Money they care about. And fraud. If I could show he used shared funds for another relationship, we could build a strong case. A few days later, he got called into a meeting. He was gone for hours. When he came back, he didn't even look at me. Went straight to the bedroom. Slammed the door. I knocked once. He didn't answer. So I opened it. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. He looked up at me, and I saw something new. Fear. "They're putting me on leave," he said. "They have my messages. They're investigating." I sat down on the other side of the room. "Rachel, no." That hit. He just blinked. Said nothing. The next day, Jeanette showed up at my house. She didn't knock. Just walked in like always. I was in the kitchen. "You think you're clever?" she said. "Trying to destroy my son's life?" I set down the dish I was washing. He did that himself. She stepped closer. He needed support, not betrayal. But I guess you people don't understand that. That was it. I told her to get out. She called me a witch. Said I was poisoning him. I said the only poison in this house came from her family name. Daniel came home to find her crying on the porch. He looked at me like I was the villain. That night, we had our first real fight. Not a small argument. A screaming, spit-flying, plate-shaking fight. "You ruined everything," he yelled. "No, Daniel." I said, "You ruined everything. When you lied. When you spent our money on her. When you let your mother treat me like garbage and said nothing. You made me the villain in your sad little story, so you didn't have to grow up." He left around midnight. Didn't say where he was going. I figured Rachel's place. I didn't care. But he didn't know I had already started separating accounts. I'd opened a new bank account in just my name, transferred my paychecks, froze our joint credit cards. I was documenting everything. The best part? He'd listed me as his emergency contact at work. And with the HR investigation underway, they called me to verify some details, his prior employment, his references. I told the truth. Just the facts. But the facts were bad for him. And while all this was unfolding, I was still going to work. Still showing up for patients. Still living my life. The cracks in his world were getting wider. And I wasn't lifting a finger to stop it. A week after Daniel was put on leave, I got a call from an unknown number during my lunch break at the hospital. I let it go to voicemail, but something made me listen right away. It was Rachel. "I don't know what your deal is," she said, voice cold but cracking around the edges. "But Daniel told me everything. You're bitter, jealous, and pathetic. He said you're trying to ruin his career because he finally stood up to you." I didn't respond. I saved the voicemail. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and listened to it 3 more times. My hands didn't shake. I didn't cry. I was done with all that. But I realized something. Daniel was trying to flip the story. He was telling Rachel and probably others that I was the one obsessed with him. That I was a controlling wife who couldn't handle being left. It made sense. He'd always been good at spinning things, making himself the victim. I'd seen it with his mother, with his coworkers. Even in our therapy sessions, he always found a way to twist the narrative until he came out looking like the poor, misunderstood man. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I sent Rachel a package. Inside, I placed copies of his credit card statements, showing gifts and hotel stays in her city, booked while he was supposedly working late. I printed out screenshots of his messages to me, to her, and to his friend where he called her gullible but hot and said, "She'll fall for anything if I talk about my healing process." I wrote a short note. "You deserve to know the full story, just like I did."
No signature.
4 days later, Daniel came home looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Eyes bloodshot, clothes wrinkled. Said nothing. Just stood in the doorway staring at me. I waited. "She dumped me," he said. I didn't blink. "Oh?" He nodded slowly. Said I was a liar. Said she never wanted to see me again. He collapsed onto the couch like his body had finally given out. Then he looked at me with a different kind of hate. Quiet. Cold. "You planned all this," he whispered. I just stared. "No, Daniel. You did. I just stopped covering for you." 2 days later, the final blow came. He was terminated from his job. Officially. HR found the messages, confirmed his behavior violated company policy. He'd lost the best-paying job he ever had, and with it, his health insurance, his status, his last shred of control. He begged me not to tell anyone. Said he'd get it together, that he just needed a break. But word was already spreading. His cousin, the one who threw the birthday dinner, texted me. "He told everyone you were draining him. Now people are saying he cheated? You okay?" People were talking. Quietly, behind his back. Just like he'd done about me. But there was one thing he still didn't know. I'd filed for divorce. I hadn't served the papers yet. I was waiting for one final moment. Because he still had no idea just how deep this was going to go. I waited until the first of the month to serve the divorce papers. I knew Daniel was broke. No savings. No job. His reputation was shot. Rachel had blocked him. His friends had gone quiet. Even his mother stopped coming around, probably too ashamed to face what her golden boy had become. When the server handed him the envelope, he didn't even open it right away. He just sat on the porch steps, staring at the papers in his lap like he was waiting to wake up from a bad dream. I didn't gloat. I didn't yell. I just walked past him, calm, steady, and said, "You can keep the couch. I don't want anything that ever held you." I moved out the next morning. I'd already signed a lease on a small condo closer to the hospital. Quiet.
Clean. Mean.
But that wasn't the end. Texas is a community property state. And I had all the records, proof of how I paid off his debt, how he used our accounts to cheat, how he spent shared money on someone else. My lawyer filed a financial misconduct claim. It worked. He owed me, not just emotionally, legally. The judge reviewed the documents, the screenshots, the credit card statements. Even the voicemail from Rachel helped. In the end, Daniel was ordered to repay a large portion of the debt I'd paid on his behalf. On top of that, I got full rights to our remaining assets, what little was left. But it was enough to cover my move, my new place, and a small vacation I took alone to Santa Fe. The first trip I ever took for myself. Daniel tried to appeal. Claimed I was vengeful, said I'd sabotaged him. But the paper trail told the truth. Word got out in his family. About everything. Jeanette tried to spin it, but her bridge club friends knew. Small-town gossip spreads fast, even in Fort Worth. People started avoiding her. She stopped showing up to community events. Last I heard, she moved in with her sister outside Houston. Daniel? He ended up working part-time at a tire shop on the outskirts of town. I saw him once when I went in to get my brakes checked. He looked thinner, grayer. He didn't meet my eyes. I left without saying a word. And Rachel? She sent me a message. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because I had my life back. Not just my money. Not just my pride. I had peace. And Daniel? He finally had to sit in the mess he made, with no one left to blame but himself.